Hi, this is Mauricio Rosas with a shortened version of the Tampa City Council Sidewalk Ordinance first reading. If you would like to see the entirety of this conversation, please see the link below.
Item number 8, a requested modification to the existing sidewalk code for Chapter 22, Streets and Sidewalks, specifically Section 22-103. As submitted, the requested code reflects the request made by council. The original request or the original information was submitted externally by Walk by Tampa, that was then reviewed by council. And our role as advisors to council, we've reviewed this. We've held several meetings with many stakeholders, including the Builders Association, Walk by Tampa. We've listened to a lot of their suggestions and recommendations and partnered with the legal department, and on that basis, we are presenting this code change for first hearing. I'd like to highlight a couple of things regarding this code change. One, that we believe, as proposed, this will directly allow us to prioritize sidewalks throughout the city in a better way. It will simplify the current code by eliminating loopholes or exceptions to building or paying into the sidewalk trust fund for new developments, particularly single-family homes, one or two homes, or also commercial properties. Finally, I'd also like to provide a couple of clarifications on items that were discussed previously regarding major renovation. This language exists in the current code as well, and it does speak to major renovations as defined in Chapter 27, which is over 50% of the house value. The other thing is that we do not, as part of this code, require removal or installation of poles or ditches where a sidewalk is not practical. We're simply asking that if persons are building a new home or doing a major renovation, that they either contribute to the sidewalk trust fund, or if they find it cheaper to do so, go ahead and build the sidewalk. And with that, we'll open up for any questions unless legal has anything to add.
I think you did answer my question, because a couple of the folks are making a big deal about the renovations and trying to mislead the public into thinking that, oh, if I'm going to throw some paint on the house or do some other minor renovations, I got to build a whole new sidewalk. And that's not the case. I have some homes in other parts of town that are new homes. Maybe it's a $400,000 home. But even so, it's still less than 1% of that $400,000 home. And if it's truly an affordable home, we have an exception for that, right, Vic?
Yes, sir, that is correct. We do have an exception for affordable homes where affordability is defined by Florida statute.
Right. And Councilman Dingfelder brought up what I was going to ask, which was, what is a home renovation or major renovation, which is that 50% plus of the assessed home value. And again, Councilman Dingfelder went over those details, considering home prices, new construction prices, especially in certain parts of the city that are $1 million or close to it and whatnot. When I'm out in the community, and I'm sure other council members hear the same thing, one of the first things I get are, fill the potholes, when are you going to pave the street, and when are you going to build the sidewalks? And I see in many parts of this community the lack thereof sidewalks. You mentioned ditches and whatnot. We talked about, West Tampa ditches, and there's ditches throughout the city, but we're way behind. We're one of the deadliest, if not the deadliest, in the country. We embrace Vision Zero, but we don't put our money where our mouth is. We are in this case because we're actually contributing to pedestrian safety of people that are in wheelchairs, people that are on bicycles, whatever it is. there's a criticism of, well, you're building a sidewalk here and a sidewalk there and it's not complete. We have neglected this forever. So if we wouldn't have neglected this from the beginning and just built the sidewalks, we would have had a complete grid system. Now we're playing catch up. This is the right thing to do. It's already been said, the mayor's on board with it, staff's on board with it. I hope that council is on board with it. We have to keep people safe. We have a lot of people that walk or want to walk, and there are a lot of places that do not have the sidewalks, whether it's kids walking to school, whether it's the elderly walking through the neighborhood, whether it's somebody in a wheelchair, motorized or not. I see these people all the time. We have a very, very dangerous situation. It's not a lot of money. I talk to realtors or people that are in the home building business, and they all say, I've never made this much money. I heard it yesterday. I've had the best last few years. The housing market is ridiculous. Oh, the house is $500,000. People are fighting and they're offering $10, $20, $30,000 cash over that just to get that house. And that's happened in many instances. So what's a few $1,000s to do the right thing, to help us build the sidewalks, necessary infrastructure investment? I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, Councilman, I heard three things that you would like clarity on. One is, what is our plan? The other is, why are we introducing or making these changes when we have sidewalk challenges on our streets already? And then the third is about repairs, which I might look to legal to help us out with. But let's start with what the plan is. So, as we discussed yesterday as well, we have mapped out our needs, and our overall needs for sidewalk, to have sidewalk on either side of every street in Tampa, is 1,300 miles. Now that 1,300 miles at current funding levels will take a very long time, absolutely. But that's not the only way or the only source that we're depending on to move our bike walk plans forward. This change to the code, and it's an existing code, it isn't a new code, we're just removing loopholes, that's it, is one part of that strategy. The other part of that strategy, as Councilman Vieira mentioned, was looking at other funding sources like surtax, in addition to our current sources as well. So by no means is this one mechanism to solve all of our sidewalk problems. Now going to sidewalk challenges, the pictures that you showed us, I completely agree that we have all kinds of challenges. One of our biggest challenges is oak trees that oftentimes pop up sidewalks and damage these sidewalks. But that isn't a reason not to build sidewalks in the first place. They can be repaired, they can be rebuilt, and we can look at and are looking at what are better species that will provide a combination of shade but limit tree root damage, and also what other measures exist. So I completely concur that we have sidewalk challenges. That's why one of the reasons we're having this conversation in the first place. And then finally, as far as the repairs go, and current sidewalk in lieu fees are being used to build new sidewalk and repair new sidewalk. Oftentimes, that repair literally means removing a panel and putting in new sidewalk. And so we have conferred with legal. We have put this together in a thoughtful manner. And the goal of this proposed ordinance or the amended ordinance is simplicity. It is purely simplicity so that we can track better. And finally, you mentioned some numbers that were proposed by external groups that may have even initiated this conversation, but at no point do we own that analysis or that data. Again, we do not feel proposing these changes to the ordinance preclude any other conditions that exist out there or any kind of historical deployment of sidewalks or not. We just feel that this is a good policy, it is equitable, and one of the biggest beneficiaries of this ordinance rather, are going to be people in neighborhoods where there's a lot of diversity, lower income, and not as much development as elsewhere in Tampa. So this is about equity and getting that prosperity across the board. This is also about our ability as practitioners and engineers to prioritize our needs via the sidewalk trust fund or the in lieu fee when sidewalk building is either not feasible or a contractor opts out of it. So again, all we're doing is simplifying the ordinance to effect better outcomes, which we will report annually. That's enshrined in the proposed ordinance. So we have many grand trees in the right of way throughout the city. Building sidewalk and removing grand trees are inherently in conflict. Where possible, and every time possible, we try to preserve grand trees. This is also part of the code. So it's a matter of where these grand trees exist, what the priorities are, and I keep going back to the priorities because the plan, to Councilman Miranda's point, is important. And our priorities begin with schools and vicinity of schools. Then it also includes ADA, persons with disabilities, access to transit, major corridors. And so as we follow these priorities, we're going to come across these challenges with or without this proposed ordinance, even with the ordinance that we have currently. So these are two separate conversations that are not necessarily related, but these are challenges that we do face, and they're real, and we deal with them on a case-by-case basis.
Council Abby Gilly, Director of Development and Growth Management. With this modification to the code, there is accompanying that a new form that is being submitted into the Acela system with any building permits. It will be identifying whether or not they are requesting the exemptions that remain. If they are requesting that exemption, that fee will then be associated with the record at that time, once it is determined that they are eligible for the exemption. That fee will then be associated with the record, and we will be tracking that. And that is what Vic was alluding to earlier, that we will be tracking that, and we will be reporting that back to you. With over 14,000 residential permits in a given year, going back to try to find out by hand and looking at each residential permit site plan was a bit cumbersome. But as this issue has evolved and we have come together to coordinate on the matter, we have that form is already in place, and also that tracking moving forward is now in place.
All right, there's been a motion made. Mr. Dingfellow has read it. I believe Mr. Maniscalco seconded it. All right, roll call.
Carlson,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Vieira,
Yes.
Citro,
I am going to vote yes. However, as my learned colleague, Councilman Dingfelder, said, there is a time between first and second reading. There are still some unanswered questions I have, and as I always strive for, is called common ground. And I am hoping that everybody involved, everybody from council to staff to sidewalk stompers to Walk Bike Tampa to TICO, comes to a common ground. Yes.
Miranda,
I've already stated my position, no.
Dingfelder,
Enthusiastically, yes.
and Goods.
Yes.
Motion.
Again, with the stipulations from second reading, I need to be clear on some of those items, but we'll vote yes today.
Motion carried with Miranda voting no. Second reading and adoption will be held on December 2nd, 2021 at 9:30 a.m.